Now, ladies and gentlemen, there are certain warning signs that we all need to be mindful of. You know, it's like when someone appears in your life and says, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help you." Well, another warning sign is any organisation with the term world in their name. So let's start with a couple, perhaps the World Health Organization to kick it off. That's the body that gave China a free pass on the Wuhan flu, while at the same time banking $500 million through issuing pandemic bonds. That's right, the World Health Organization was scheduled to repay investors around $500 million in early 2020, unless, of course, a pandemic was declared. The investors lost all their money, but that became the World Health Organization's gain. Then, of course, there's the World Food Programme. It too is part of the United Nations, and it actually won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2020. Now, all that sounds pretty impressive until you remember that Barack Obama won it in 2008 just for having the right skin colour. And despite spending $8 billion every year on hunger and strengthening resilience against climate change, there are still 850 million undernourished people in the world and around 780 million obese people. Clearly, we need more food socialism. Then we also have the World Meteorological Organization. It has a crew of 200 and it publishes an annual status of the World Climate Report, casting horror scenarios about greenhouse gases, climate change, sea level rise and sea ice. The 2019 report is a beauty. It essentially says that the Australian bushfires of that year were due to climate change and makes no mention of the arsonists or the Greens insistent on terrible land management policies. By the way, according to the WMO, climate change is also responsible for drought, floods, storms and weather-related damage. Now that made me wonder what caused them before the Industrial Revolution, or before mankind for that matter. But we're also fortunate enough to have the World Tourism Organization, which has, and I quote, a one planet vision for responsible tourism. These include the vital buzzwords social inclusion and climate action. It even has some pretty cool hashtags, responsible recovery and build back better. And it boasts of that by shutting down the world economy this past year, it reduced carbon dioxide emissions by a whopping 8%. That means there's only 92% to go before we're back living in caves, but saving the planet while we do it. And of course, we shouldn't forget the World Trade Organization. With lofty goals espousing free trade, its real mission seems not to be holding China to the same integrity requirements as the rest of the world when it comes to intellectual property protection, trade tariffs and barriers, etc. Thank goodness it has the goal to reduce inequality, which is socialist speak for taking from the productive and giving to the non-productive. Someone needs to tell them about history. It shows it never works. But for those unable to sustain the rigour of the real world, there is always a refuge in the World Vegetable Centre. That's right, a World Vegetable Centre. This esteemed body devoted 20 years to researching the sweet potato before giving it away because the costs of doing that research were too high. It now focuses on, and I quote, looking to the wild relatives of domesticated crops to save the human diet from climate change. Wowee. If only we never cultivated crops, the world would be better off and the climate wouldn't be changing. Hey, but what about those hungry people I mentioned earlier? Wouldn't they be even hungrier? Well, all these authorities are pushing an agenda. It's the same agenda. It's to decarbonise, deindustrialise and disempower the Western world. They are part of a concerted plan to redesign capitalism in a new image. That image, of course, is socialism. And it's spearheaded by the granddaddy organisation of them all, the World Economic Forum. The WEF is the architect of the Great Reset and the Fourth Industrial Revolution. They coined the Build Back Better hashtag that is actually proving so popular with big government elites right across the globe. And they even predict that by 2030, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. They call this servitisation, which is a term and an agenda that looks a lot like servitude to me. The WEF claim that this servitization will help save the planet and assist the post-COVID-19 recovery. There's a couple of those buzz phrases again. However, servitization begs the question, if you don't actually own anything, who will own what you're renting? Well, the answer lies within the WF Premier Forum, that's at Davos. Davos is the gathering of global elites, including big business CEOs, industry chiefs, government leaders, bureaucrats, and multi-billionaires with political agendas. Under the WF vision, the Davos attendees will own what you'll be renting. And trust me on this, it's not going to be a philanthropic enterprise. They'll all be looking to make more money than they currently do, and actually to take more control of your life under the guise of equality. By reducing you to a mere user rather than an owner, the world does actually become more equal, because it will concentrate power, authority and money in the hands of a tiny few, while the rest of us become mere economic vassals for these oligarchs. So make no mistake, servitization is just a new name for economic slavery. It's socialism on a global scale.